Hey everybody, Mikki here. You're listening to Wikipedia, and this week on the podcast, I speak to Dr. Libby Weaver about one of the most overlooked and underestimated drivers of women's health challenges, and that is iron. Dr. Libby Weaver is a nutritional biochemist, best-selling author, and internationally recognised speaker who has spent decades educating both practitioners and the public on the biochemical underpinnings of fatigue, anxiety, hormonal disruption, and low resilience. In this conversation, she brings her trademark ability to connect physiology with lived experience, unpacking why she so often says, fix iron first. Together, we explore iron beyond the anaemia narrative, diving into its role in neurotransmitter production, thyroid function, metabolism, perimenopause, and even ADHD. We discuss why iron deficiency remains under-recognised in teenage girls and health-conscious women alike, how inflammation and gut health can silently impair absorption, and why wide reference ranges don't always reflect optimal well-being. Dr. Libby also shares practical insights on testing, common absorption mistakes, and the health stories women need to stop accepting as normal. This is a grounded, physiology-first discussion that reframes fatigue, anxiety, and just hormones, quote unquote, through a biochemical lens, and offers clear, practical takeaways for women who want to genuinely feel well, not just told they're normal. I feel like Dr. Libby does not need any kind of bio being read about her because everyone knows Dr. Libby. She is amazing. She has been around for decades, and that is not to suggest she is old. But Dr. Libby Weaver, PhD, is a nutritional biochemist, best-selling author, and internationally recognised speaker known for translating complex physiology into practical, accessible health education. With a PhD in biochemistry and more than 2 decades of clinical experience, she has worked with thousands of individuals, from everyday women to elite performers, helping them understand the biochemical drivers behind fatigue, anxiety, hormonal disruption, and low resilience. She is the author of multiple best-selling books on women's health, stress physiology, iron deficiency, and metabolic well-being, and is widely regarded for her ability to connect symptoms with underlying nutrient, hormonal, and lifestyle imbalances. Dr. Libby's work focuses on addressing root causes rather than managing symptoms in isolation, with particular expertise in iron deficiency, thyroid function, perimenopause, nervous system regulation, and the biochemical impact of modern stress. Through her education platforms, practitioner trainings, and evidence-informed formulations, she continues to advocate for a physiology-first approach to women's health, empowering women to move beyond "it's just your hormones" and understand what is truly happening inside their bodies. This was such an amazing conversation with Libby. I really appreciated the time she took to spend with me diving into this topic, and you can find Libby over at drlibby.com, and BioBlends, the formulations that she has put together for iron, magnesium, and more, over at www.bioblends.com. Before we crack on into the interview, though, I would like to remind you that the best way to support this podcast is to hit the subscribe button on your favourite podcast listening platform and share this conversation with someone that you know would benefit. Those are the best ways for more people to discover Wikipedia in amongst literally thousands of other podcasts out there. So people can learn from the guests that I have on the show, like Dr. Libby Weaver. All right, guys, enjoy this conversation. Lara Bryden, I think that you guys did an event together last year. She was just here staying at my house actually this week, and she was very excited to hear that I was chatting to you.
Oh, she's just one of the most super special humans on the planet, isn't she?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And so when I said I'm chatting to Libby this week, she's like, oh, this is so great. You have to ask her about teenage girls. And I'm like, I absolutely will.
Oh, yeah, I'm a bit obsessed.
Do you know, Libby, we were chatting about it actually, because this is a great thing with friends who are in the health space, is that, and I imagine that you and I are around this. I think I'm a little bit younger, probably, but not by a huge amount.
51.
Yeah, but a couple of years really. So, and there's such a focus on perimenopause and menopause health, which obviously is super important, but it's all about how you age and how you grow and the health of teenagers, of girls, children is just, that's where it's all sort of set up. I mean, it's set up generations before, but what you can actually, intervene with. And I think not that it's lost, but social media seems to have sort of put forth issues that makes you almost forget about, a lot of other areas in life that you could focus on.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. It's really concerning to me, to be honest, because I feel that almost any new experience a woman has between the ages of about 35 and 55, there's this tendency in our culture right now to go, oh, it's perimenopause. And obviously when we say something is perimenopause, we're attributing what we're experiencing to changes in hormones. And of course that they might be responsible. But my concern, as you've just suggested, is we could be missing 4,000 other things. And if we just treat those symptoms with hormones without actually digging in and seeing if someone is iron deficient or insulin resistant or their thyroid's underperforming, then we're going to miss all of that, and that obviously all has consequences. So, I'm concerned, to be honest, Mikki, about the narrative that is, being. I have girlfriends who send me videos saying, "Is it true that my brain and my bones and my face are all going to fall apart if I don't use estrogen?" And that's an awfully fearful message to be suggesting that that's what will happen to women. I'm not against women using estrogen, of course. I know many women who do, and they feel fantastic doing so, and I know others who can't. And then, of course, there's a whole group of women who don't want to go down that road, and I'm all for all experiences. I think we need to make space for all experiences. But when the fear messaging out there right now is just unacceptable to me.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate that. And I also think there's something about I'm not blaming it on the health system, but when you go to your GP and you've got 8 minutes and you get bloods and they measure a marker, and I know we're going to be talking about iron today, they measure ferritin and it comes back and they're like, you're normal, and it's not investigated further. And I'm not placing the blame on the GPs, but there's something going on that means that a lot of the fatigue, a lot of the issues that we'll be discussing today are just being not swept under the carpet, but dismissed as sort of like normalized. This is just life these days.
It's true. And when there's no sort of time, there's no space in an 8-minute session to dive deeper or to inquire about what might be creating that, and giving solutions, first of all, lifestyle-based solutions, rather than just instantly throwing medication at it, or allowing someone to think that this is just how my life has to be now. I'm supposed to be perpetually exhausted. It's a big concern. I agree. There's all sorts of change that's obviously needed, and I don't have the answers, but I think these conversations can help women advocate for themselves better.
I agree. And this is what I love about the stuff that you put out there, Libby. Like, you ask questions and you bring topics to the forefront that people don't even know that they were experiencing things, or even knowing what kind of question to ask their doctor. Do you know what I mean? Like if the only thing put in front of you is hormones, then you're like, well, clearly hormones are the solution to these issues. But because of your books and because of your podcasts and your information and your courses, people know that they can do a little bit of deeper dives themselves, and then they're able to do what they can, but also take questions to their doctor. They're able to sort of at least try and have a conversation, or at least, and if not with that doctor, then I know that there are doctors out there that actually do look a little bit deeper as well, right?
Very much. And Mikki, yourself, Lara Bryden, there are many of us out there sort of, I think, trying to arm people with a fresh perspective, or at least questions to consider just within themselves, or to have, some different conversations with the health professionals who they work with. It's there's kind of a crew, I think, of people, of health professionals who are like-minded in that way. And it's time, because if we just kind of hand it over to the 8-minute consultation, I mean, I feel so sorry for GPs trying to, do their best work in such a short space of time. It's near on impossible. And it's why I think also I say this often when I am speaking, we almost need to change what we seek from our GPs. They're not trained in nutrition, so expecting them to have all of those answers. So we need to really embrace sort of an allied health perspective, which is almost like training the public to think, okay, I want to know about lifestyle first. So once I've ruled out that there's anything kind of sinister going on, which my GP helps with, and I now want to go down a lifestyle path, that's where chats with people like you are just so crucial in all of your work.
Yeah, no, I totally appreciate that, Libby, and agree with that. So you've just covered just such a huge amount of information in the years that you've been sort of bringing information to, like the women like us, and now your focus has gone a little bit more specific, almost reductionist. Actually, you've gone from lifestyle and burnout and things like that. Now you're sort of really sort of dialing down. And the first thing I want to chat to you about is iron. This is something which you must have seen a need and went, this is what we need to think about, and it's beyond just anemia and energy. So can you chat to me about that, Libby?
You're so lovely to ask. Yes, I'm obsessed, is to put it lightly. I actually, a couple of years ago, Mikki, I started writing a book that was going to be essentially about perimenopause so that I could offer some fresh perspectives on, let's look at it in a really holistic kind of way. Let's look at it from a metabolic health perspective, this transition across the middle span of our life, mostly because I wanted either the women who were already in that transition to understand some other drivers, other things that could be driving what they might be experiencing, and also to help women who aren't there yet to not be frightened, because every second 36-year-old I talk to says to me, my algorithm is filled with terrifying perimenopause reels. Is it possible for it to, not involve so much suffering? And the answer is yes. So originally I set out to write a book about essentially perimenopause, and the first chapter was about iron deficiency. And I wrote 11,000 words and didn't want to stop. And I started to see that, iron deficiency touches everything, primarily because obviously of its role in oxygen delivery to cells, but also its requirement for us to be able to produce thyroid hormones and convert T4 inactive thyroid hormone into T3, the active one. So once I started to sort of see that picture, I wanted to go deeper on that. So, yeah, the rest of the book got shoved aside and I just went really deep on iron deficiency. Obviously, it is the most common nutritional deficiency in the world. A study was published a couple of years ago in New Zealand showing that up to 55% of adult women across the menstruation years experience some degree of iron deficiency, whether it's iron depletion, iron deficiency, or full-blown iron deficiency anemia. So the stats are wild, and I just felt like it was being missed. I felt like the world had kind of gone down this road of hacking health and trying to sort of do all these things that we really could park. We were missing basics. And I started to, if you want to have an ice bath, go for it. But I started to say, you can't ice bath your way out of iron deficiency. Like, nothing's going to solve that. And I was when I was still seeing patients, seeing so many women with their ferritin at the bottom end of the normal range. And I would notice that once we got it higher, and obviously other iron markers need to move as well, but when I would see a change in their iron parameters, women would just feel so much better. And it's almost like not just our energy, but it's almost like our emotional resilience improves. And so that's why I'm obsessed with it, because I don't want anyone of any age, from newborn babies to teenage girls to women in perimenopause and beyond, living any longer with iron deficiency. So I just wanted to shine a light back on it.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you mentioned the resiliency thing, because particularly at this time of life, like we're like, people talk about it like you're sandwiched between like the generations. You've got aging parents, you've got children, you've got careers. You're probably on the, there's a lot going on there. Then you're trying to maintain relationships, and a lot of where women struggle that I talk to them about is that lack of resiliency. Like, they're just unable to cope. And then when that happens, then they turn to other behaviors as soothing, right? And then it it's a vicious cycle, actually. So, yeah, and I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but I like that that focus, because it really sort of resonates, I think, with a lot of people out there.
That's perfectly articulated, Mikki. Yeah, I wrote it probably seems a bit weird, but I put a little statement in the book that iron is forged in the hottest part of the fire, and it sounds like a bit nuts. But the reason that I put that little quote in there was I worry that collectively we've forgotten that we are supposed to go through hard things, and it forges our character in, I think, very rewarding, gratifying, uplifting ways that allow us then to contribute back to society in a much bigger way than we could before we went through the hard thing. But when we're iron deficient, we can't feel that, we don't have that lived experience. There's this sense of absolute depletion. And obviously resilience is made up of so many factors, but I just think for the physical structure, for the earth suit, I think with better iron reserves, with more kind of iron available to pop into those little red blood cells, especially, so that our bone marrow is getting that. I've seen it firsthand. I've experienced it firsthand. The resilience is elevated, and I worry that we're missing that in the world a bit at the moment.
Yeah. So, Libby, to what extent do you think this problem with the iron deficiency, like 55%, that's quite a stark number, really. I mean, it's huge. To what extent do you think this is as a result of obviously dietary patterns? But I see, when health messages are put out there that we need to reduce down red meat and reduce our consumption, the people they're targeting are not the ones picking up what they're putting down. They are we're taking those health conscious women who are already reducing a lot in their diet anyway and further reducing that. And I've just literally probably set you up to answer a certain way, but that's what I see. And I'm curious to know if this is also a thought that you've had.
Very much so, Mikki. And there's polarization right now, obviously, in nutrition. There always has been. And I wholeheartedly agree with what you've just said. So the meat reduction, for my age group, and obviously so women right now got in perimenopause, they grew up in the low-fat era, and through that time meat was a bit confusing. I used to meet a lot of people who they'd say, I feel like if I eat flesh, I gain flesh, so that eating red meat was a bit wrapped up in dieting mentality, I think, for women in midlife at the moment. And so when those messages come out about eat less red meat, they embrace it when they're already not having enough. I think too, though, and I know Lara talks about this beautifully, we stopped eating sort of nose to tail, and we stopped eating the whole animal as well. So obviously when people do eat red meat, they're getting the muscle meat, which is terrific, great, beautiful iron content there, and zinc, all sorts of other things as well. But when we're not eating the brains and the heart and the spleen and all the other bits where there is so much nutrition concentrated, it's obviously I think too that's been a shift for us as well as in human evolution. So there are some butchers around the place who will incorporate some of those meats into their sausages or into their mince. So there is a way, obviously, for us to do it. We can make pate, which makes it all a bit more palatable, and you can serve it at a dinner party and people won't think you're odd. So there are ways we can do that. But obviously that doesn't appeal to everyone. And I have a phrase in my work, I want to meet people where they're at. So I think there are people who they eat in a vegan way because it's very deep in their heart and they want to be true to that and honour that, and that's beautiful. But there are also people who eat that way because their friend kind of pressured them into doing it, or they're doing it because they're frightened of weight gain. So it's sort of from a fear response. It's not really who they are. And I think you only know in your own heart what your own driver is. But regardless, it's there is 8,000 reasons why so many women are iron deficient. Dietary patterns is one of them, gut function, inflammation. There are many, but dietary patterns is a big one. We often so many women just literally don't eat enough iron.
Yeah. And this is a bit of a tangent actually, but you mentioned gut function, and I wonder in the work that you do and actually what it's like in Australia with the sort of emergence of more of these weight loss medications that people are going on to obviously lose weight, but also alongside it aren't getting good advice around micronutrients, and then also the medications themselves are affecting gut function in a way that makes it even harder to absorb nutrients. These are things that don't keep me up at night, but I do spend a large time wondering about the information that's out there. And I'm absolutely not opposed to the really good use cases for things like this as well. But I just, to what extent are people getting the right and the good information to go around with it is something I think about a bit.
Yeah, and good on you for doing that and drawing attention to that. There's not a lot, obviously. There's a massive lack of education about how to support people who choose to go down that road, and with the change in even bile flow, people need to be supported as to how to to help their body continue to do that while they're using those sorts of medications. And there's no focus on, with that reduction in appetite, you need to really make the most of what you are consuming and make sure it's really nutrient dense, or you'll become deficient in all sorts of things. That education I don't think is hugely out there. People might become aware of it and pursue it for themselves, but it's not until their hair, I've had a number of people, it's not till their hair starts falling out that they go, I better do something here. Something's not right.
Yeah. Well, your hair is absolutely gorgeous, and it has always been absolutely gorgeous, Libby. Clearly, you've got really good iron status. So actually, can we talk about some of the things which people might experience if they are low in iron? And then I would like to also, get some sort of parameters around what is iron what is adequate iron? When is it too much, and things like that?
You're so gorgeous. So, the first symptom obviously is fatigue, but the trouble with that, and we were sort of talking before, the trouble with that is that it's so easy when you feel tired to just think, oh, well, I'm busy, I'm stressed, I'm juggling children and aging parents and a busy work life, and I'm renovating the house, and I'm worried about the bigger things happening in the world, and on it goes. So it's easy to write fatigue off. So my encouragement to people is that if the fatigue lasts for more than 2 weeks, when you're obviously getting sleep, it's not interrupted by getting up to little children in the night, for example, then you want to investigate why you're fatigued. Fatigue is not normal. It's feedback. So fatigue is the first one. And the reason for that is, and I know you know this, Mikki, this is for your listeners, I get people to imagine that the body is made up of 50 trillion tiny little circles. Obviously, they're cells, and then inside a cell is a city, and there's building and there's construction work going on, and if something in that city isn't being used, all the little worker bees in there will deconstruct it. Obviously, the mitochondria are in there creating energy, but every single circle, every single city eats food and eliminates waste, and for those cities to function, oxygen is required. So iron attaches to the hemoglobin. The oxygen gets delivered. So that's one reason why energy is so compromised, because the little cities that literally make up our physical structure can't work as well when that's compromised. Also, too, obviously, our red blood cells that carry the oxygen get their colour from iron. They live for 120 days. And there's 2 billion of them being made every single second. So it's wild how quickly and iron is needed for all of those cells, obviously. So our iron requirements to be delivered to the bone marrow to make those new red blood cells is major. So then if we take it further, so fatigue is obviously a big symptom. We also need iron to literally be able to produce our neurotransmitters. So dopamine for motivation, GABA for chill, for calm, serotonin for contentment, melatonin for sleep. Iron is literally a cofactor in the creation of all of those neurotransmitters. And once we stop to think about that, it's no surprising then that so many iron deficiency symptoms are related to mood. And Mikki, I worry right now that as a culture, we have this tendency when someone feels anxious to instantly go down a psychological or psychiatric road, and that's fantastic and needed. I'm not saying let's not do that. It's helped gazillions of people. My worry, though, is that the biology, the nutrition, the physiological role of nutrition in how we feel is potentially being ignored. So a study was published in 2023 called The Psychiatric Manifestations of Iron Deficiency Anemia, and the researchers looked at people diagnosed with anxiety, with depression, and with anhedonia, which is the inability to experience pleasure, and then they looked at their iron status, and obviously correlation isn't causation, but the correlation was massive, and certainly in clinical practice you see the effect on mood. And when I remember being at uni, obviously that's a long time ago now, but we were anxiety was one of the symptoms of iron deficiency, and that was before anxiety became its own psychiatric condition. So I worry that that's being missed. I particularly worry about that in teenage girls. If I can just go down a little tangent for a second.
Yeah, do. I love it.
Because because of that cultural pattern, that cultural sort of way that we're operating right now, I've just seen it too many times, Mikki, to not want to shine a light on it. It's really concerning to me that, a teenage girl might say to her parents, I feel really anxious, and because they love and adore her and want the best for her, the response is to sort of not just to sort of see it as I feel anxious, but to immediately go, oh, she has anxiety. And that language is a big deal I hear that very differently. I feel anxious to I have anxiety. They're very different things. And so then, the support is given, and often she might be medicated. And what if she's iron deficient? And what if it's iron deficiency and, concerns with friends at school or how she's going academic, whatever's bothering her. And I'm not for a minute saying that all anxiety is caused by iron deficiency. I'm just saying it's being missed. And so then that girl gets diagnosed with a condition, and she now believes she has a disease, and she now believes she needs to rely on medication for the rest of her life. And I have a big problem with that iron deficiency could be being missed in too many of those young girls, because as we know, all different versions of dieting culture very sadly still exist, and the restriction starts at younger and younger ages. And it's really hard once you start menstruating, it's hard to meet your iron requirements when you're a robust meat and potatoes kind of eater versus if you're restricting in some kind of way. And obviously a lot of teenage girls restrict for various reasons and in, using different modalities. So that's a big concern for me. So, mood symptoms is another big one, hair loss, heart palpitations, and then thyroid function as well. So to be able to produce thyroid hormones, thyroid peroxidase, the enzyme that allows us to do that, is reliant on iron. And then also we need iron to convert inactive thyroid hormone T4 into T3, the active one. So we then can get the symptoms of a thyroid that's not working as well as it once was when we're iron deficient. So that just scratches the surface of some of the symptoms.
No, totally. And, you just I just want to touch on a couple of those things, Libby, is of course you're not suggesting everything is related just to iron deficiency. But again, it just speaks to the idea that, we can't just rely on the GP to be able to sort of do that deep dive that we need, because they're not trained. And they may have learnt, like in one lecture, just the importance of iron and B12 and things like that. But that's not in the forefront of their mind when they're prescribing medications all day, and that's just sort of what they do. So, I think to your point, having and I don't even know where this needs to sit. Do you know what I mean? Like, because people don't have access. I mean, people have access to information, of course, but some people don't, and some people don't have access to the right information. And I mean, this is a bigger, wider, huge conversation, but I appreciate your concern around that, and then to have that narrative of I've got this thing, and then to take that through their life. Like you do see that a lot. And I'm curious, actually, Libby, is like when you were looking at your research, was there any link between diagnosing ADHD, for example, and iron deficiency?
Yep, it's all there, Mikki, and we're not talking about. Thank you for raising it. We're not talking about it enough. It's not. Again, it's people go down a purely psychological or psychiatric road when those symptoms come to light. And in adults and in children, there's a lot of crossover with the symptoms of iron deficiency and the inability to concentrate, inability to focus, the brain fog. So there's a lot of crossover. And I'm not saying for a second, don't get the psychological and psychiatric support you need when you go down that ADHD road, but please don't miss testing iron deficiency. And if any degree of it comes up, treat it and see if you can, I would encourage people to notice any difference they experience from better iron status. So, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, Libby, if I'm going to the doctor and I'm getting tests, like, what would I look for? Like what would I ask my doctor for blood tests for? And then what numbers should I be expecting? Or wanting? Wanting is a better word, sorry. Not expecting.
So I would encourage a person to start with iron studies, which is 4 different tests. So your serum iron, which is a reflection of your recent dietary intake and or any supplementation you've had. So it's best to stop iron supplements for 4 to 7 days before you have a blood test to get a more accurate picture. So serum iron first, then that iron studies group of tests will also measure a thing called transferrin. So this is a little confusing one, I think, sometimes for people to wrap their head around, because transferrin is elevated in iron deficiency and iron deficiency anemia, and people see that, this is an iron test and it's high, I look like I have too much. But no, transferrin is a transporter that carries iron in the blood. So I get people to imagine transferrin like a taxi, and its job is to pick up passengers. The passengers obviously units of iron. So your body will make more taxis, it will make more transferrin in an attempt to get more iron to try to pick up more passengers. So the normal range for transferrin for adult women in New Zealand and Australian pathology labs is 2 to 3.6 grams per litre. And rather than looking at just normal ranges, I rather consider optimal ranges. So I look at once transferrin goes above about 2.6, I see that as a sign of the body seeking iron. It started to make a few more taxis to try to obtain more iron. So that once, above 2.6 for that transferrin can be a sign that your body is actually seeking more iron. Another test in that iron studies little group is called transferrin saturation. So that's how many passengers are in the taxi. And then ferritin, which is iron storage. And at the moment, it's the best reflection we have of our bone marrow status. So ferritin is, how the body stores iron. And I get people to see that almost like their backup battery. So if you have heavy periods or you have blood loss, just normal, your normal monthly blood loss, and you're not eating enough, you've got to pull some iron out of storage so that you have enough to be able for it to zip about and do its work. And I think a lot of women don't have a solid and a robust enough backup battery. So the normal range for ferritin in New Zealand and Australian pathology labs is 20 to 220 micrograms per litre, which I love that you're raising your eyebrows because that's wild, because it's so big,
yes.
It's so broad.
Yes.
And in my clinical experience, and there's also literature that very much speaks to this, once ferritin goes below 50 micrograms per litre, there are symptoms usually associated with that. So the optimal range of ferritin, I think, is 50 to 150 micrograms per litre. So I like it somewhere in that range. And I also get women to tune in and notice how they feel once their ferritin gets a bit higher. And it's not just energy. It's the feedback I get is it's not just the energy, it's that resilience factor that we talked about earlier. That's kind of what elevates. So that's the beginning. And then look at that. Obviously, there are other nutrients needed for healthy iron metabolism. We need copper, we need vitamin A, different B vitamins. So there's a range of nothing in the body acts alone. So we also know that inflammation disrupts iron absorption. We know that inflammation can falsely elevate ferritin. So if there's some confusion just with iron studies, then we can do those additional tests. We can start to look at ceruloplasmin, which is an enzyme that carries copper. That is a bit of a that's an okay way to sort of look at copper. We can look at CRP, which is just a stock standard way to assess some inflammation without going into specific interleukins, the inflammatory cytokines themselves. So, yeah, there's additional tests that can be done, but I like to start with iron studies and just see where that's at. Oh, actually, can I quickly just say something I've seen more and more of is when we do a full blood count with those iron tests and we look at the white blood cells, if someone has elevated eosinophils, which is a type of white blood cell, I suspect there's either some kind of food they're eating that they can't digest properly, or what I would just generically say is a parasite infection. So there's something unfavourable going on with the gut for those elevated eosinophils to be there. I learned that from a gastroenterologist in the 90s. So when I see kind of a bit of a weird pattern with iron studies, so ferritin might be low, but transferrin is also low. Once transferrin is low, that's the body saying, whoa, back, I don't want more iron right now. Then I'll look at eosinophils and see if there's a parasite, because the body's saying, even though the ferritin's low, the body's saying, I don't want more iron right now because it's just going to feed the parasite. So we've got to do the gut work first. So it's very, I want to say it's complex, but it's sort of not, but there's a lot to it, and that's why working with a nutrition professional who understands all of that, like yourself, Mikki, is key for people to get great outcomes.
No, absolutely, and there is a lot of different schools of thought out there when it comes to iron, isn't there? So I've chatted to someone who doesn't think any woman of sort of reproductive age should have an iron above 30 due to. What is that even due to? I did look it up once, more than once actually. I probably wrote about it too, but can't remember. But there was, but to thinking that it's too high a iron is dangerous. Now I know that there is a cutoff with which iron does cause oxidative stress and damage, and we talk about that. But the 30 seemed like quite a low cutoff, and but it was based on some theory that had something behind it. Do you know what that would be related to, Libby?
So there's a school of thought that it's not iron deficiency, it's copper deficiency, or bioavailable copper deficiency.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. And so what I've seen when someone goes down that road, copper's really important. I put it as a cofactor in the product I designed. It's very important, but I've seen a lot of people tank their iron when they don't do iron. If you're not eating enough iron, then we can't escape our biological requirement for it. But it just doesn't act alone. So I think that school of thought is trying to prevent oxidative stress and inflammation, of course, but I do worry that people then crash their iron status when they're not focused on iron and they're just focused on copper. We need both, and we only need a tiny amount of copper. There's some suggestions at the moment that the RDI is too low. The RDI for adult women is a little bit less than 1 milligram per day, 0.9 milligrams per day. So there's some school of thought that it's better if copper is at about 1 to 3 milligrams per day. But again, we must get it, but it's tiny compared to iron, because across the menstruation years we need 18 milligrams of iron per day, and that's just to prevent deficiency. It'll be higher if there's heavy periods. So
yeah. And so Libby, how high is too high with ferritin? I mean, optimal you set up to 150. So because I know that there are many people who may have had their full iron studies, they'll have a ferritin of 196, 228, but then they'll look at their, say, saturation levels and they'll be low. So how does someone make sense of those sort of numbers, and what would their next step be?
So I'd be considering, if saturation is low and ferritin is sort of high, like you're saying, I'd be suspicious that there's inflammation falsely elevating that ferritin. And it's where there's some terrific research being done at the moment with some new test development, and the tests aren't available yet in stock standard pathology. They're still only being used for research purposes to establish their credibility. I'm very excited by what I'm seeing there, because they're not dependent on inflammation. And these tests are looking at iron's delivery to red blood cells, to the bone marrows, and that's what obviously is a great sign of a really healthy iron pool being distributed where it needs to go and adequate iron being available for that. So I think that iron studies is the best we have right now, including ferritin, but I think there is some terrific work being done. And yeah, I don't know how long it will be. It needs to hurry up, in my opinion.
Yeah, but watch the space.
Yeah, very much. Yep.
So people will be listening to this, and I have got this clinically with a number of clients over the years, and it doesn't matter what they do, they cannot keep their iron levels up. They will either take supplements don't tend to hit it, and we will talk supplements because I know that you have a very, it's been really well received, your supplement. I'd love to chat to you about the formulation of that. But iron supplements don't touch it. Iron infusions only keep it up for so long. So in your experience, Libby, what's going on there, and how do we sort of investigate that further? Because it doesn't seem right that the body doesn't hold iron.
No. So in those situations, I go looking at what's contributing. So is it significant iron loss? So are the periods really heavy? Is that where the focus needs to be? If we could make the periods less heavy, then that iron loss will be mitigated somewhat, and the person might be able to maintain a reasonable iron status. So is it heavy loss? Is it inadequate intake? So I have met lots of people over the years who they really do think they're eating enough, but eating enough iron-rich foods, but then they're nowhere near it. But I've also met people who have found out they're iron deficient and then become very, very focused on eating iron-rich foods, and they've been able to really recover their status. So I'll give you one example. A lady who starts work very early in the morning, she'd smash coffees to start her day and take her iron supplement in the morning and just have toast and whatever for brekkie. And she was so iron deficient, couldn't hold it. She switched it and went, I'm not starting the day with coffee. She started to begin her day with sardines, which are a beautiful source of iron because you eat the liver, and didn't have her coffee till mid-morning. And she thinks that was the biggest thing that made a massive difference. So she was so sometimes I think when we can't hold iron, I do think when we're not sort of seeing maybe that there's still a dietary inadequacy going in, or because it's really for health, and we sort of touched on this earlier, Mikki, when someone's already really health conscious, Lara talks about this beautifully in her books, like eat for satiety. I don't meet many women who eat for satiety. So I worry that there's still not enough going in. I also, to touch on the absorption of it, obviously in food there's heme iron and non-heme iron, and they're absorbed completely differently. And with non-heme iron, the absorption is so poor, partly because it relies on there being acid present. So that's why vitamin C, we're told to pair the non-heme iron obviously with vitamin C because it's ascorbic acid, but you could pair it with any acid. And then and the non-heme iron is in the chemical form of Fe3+, which the body can't absorb. We have to convert it to the Fe2+. Stomach acid is crucial for that. And I think these days with stress is not very good for our stomach acid production. So I think with persistent stress hormone production, that's compromising iron absorption right from the get-go. So that can be another reason why I think people can't hold it, because they might be eating it, but they're not absorbing it because their stomach acid pH is either too high or there's not, it's almost like a hypochlorhydria situation. That can be contributing. And then also if iron finally does get down to the cells that line the small intestine, sitting on the surface of those gut cells I get people to visualize it like a truck. It's actually a transporter. It has a name, DMT1. We won't worry about the big, long, silly name. But the iron has to get on the back of that truck and be driven inside the cell. But that iron, so firstly, there's got to be enough trucks available, and those trucks are used for zinc absorption, calcium absorption, so a lot of our other minerals with that 2+ charge use those trucks. But now the iron is inside the cell and it's on its own. So we call that free iron, and that free iron is what can do damage. So that free iron from the non-heme iron can drive inflammation in the gut cells. But iron is still inside the cell. It's got to get out the back door, and that's why we need copper. So the copper-dependent enzyme comes along and picks the iron up from the back door. So there's a lot that can go wrong there. So when someone can't hold iron, it could be related to digestion, not eating enough iron-rich foods. It could be heavy period loss. There can be parasites, in inverted commas, taking it for their own use. So they're the sorts of things that I'd consider when someone can't hold it, and also the quality of their supplement.
Yeah. Okay. So before we get into supplements, you do mention parasites, and maybe it's my algorithm, but but over the last couple of years, there's been a real focus on parasites, on worms, on environmental toxins, everything. But to what extent should me here living in Auckland be concerned that parasites are an issue for my gut or my ability to hold iron, albeit I don't have an issue holding iron? But is this a real concern, and are the tests adequate to really know for sure if you've got parasites or not?
Well, the first symptom is not pleasant to talk about, but you sometimes get an itchy bottom and there's changes with your stools.
Oh, there you go.
There are obvious signs. The tummy tends to gurgle. You'll be lying in bed at night and it's very noisy. Your tummy's
is that when
very
they wake up? Is that I've heard that. Is that when they wake up?
I don't know. I don't think we know that. But
right.
A gurgling stomach is coupled with itchy bottom and changes in stools, coupled with tanking iron. Then I'm going to suspect a parasite if eosinophils are elevated. So that's the picture. I think that there's a tendency right now with different people's algorithms to get hit with some pretty rando parasite kind of messages. But clinically, that's how I would work it, like in a more rational sense, that's how I'd work it out.
Okay, no, that is actually really helpful. As I was asking the question, I was feeling a little silly, thinking surely, but equally, I think other people will be wondering this as well. Like as they're trying to rule things out, it's helpful to sort of know the real bare basics. So Libby, most iron supplements are like a sledgehammer to the gut that people have to take. And obviously there are sources of you've got the Soul Gut Gentle iron, you've got Multifor apparently is easier on the gut, and there are different forms of iron that are supposed to be better than others. But how did you view the supplementation piece in the way that got you to sort of create the product that you created? Because it's quite different from everything else.
Yeah, yes, it is, Mikki. So all we've had, I guess I call them old school supplements now. And when I was still seeing patients and someone was iron deficient and they weren't eating enough iron-rich foods, I'd get them to do that. But if they were already deficient, I would encourage them to also take a supplement. And around 24 milligrams a day is what has been suggested, that doesn't, push hepcidin too high too fast, because hepcidin is a protein the liver makes that blocks iron absorption. It's like the bouncer at the stadium saying no more can come in. So, and I would use that in a synthetic form of iron. And it was really exciting if someone's blood tests 6 to 8 weeks later had gone up by about 3 to 4 units. That was, we're on the right track. How good. So I had been looking, BioBlend, full transparency, I have a supplement company called BioBlends and I do all the formulations for that. And I'd been and everything with BioBlends is made from food. It's not synthetic. So it's different right from the get-go. And I'd been trying to develop an iron supplement since 2016. And I have tried so many things, and I won't name them, but I did trials. So I recruited 20 women whose ferritin was less than 30 and gave them not what I ended up using, this other thing that I thought I was going to use that was made from food. And we did blood tests at day 0, at 4 weeks, and after 8 weeks. and they were given this supplement, and there were 20 women, 2 women's iron status stayed round about the same, and the other 18 got worse.
Oh.
So, and that's out there being sold, and I'm not putting my name on that. It just does not work. So that's a great example of you taking the iron, but you literally can't absorb it. So that took a lot of time and a lot of money. So threw it all out, back to the drawing board, and I ended up finding, so in peas, to back up the bus, animals, including humans and plants, store iron in ferritin. So ferritin is, for a visualization, imagine ferritin is a protein cage, and then inside that ferritin cage can be up to 4,500 iron atoms, all held together in a little mineral complex. So, and inside peas, they're very good at holding iron inside ferritin. So
hang on, as in like snow peas, or like
just
normal peas, like
peas.
I'm eating a pea, right? Okay. When you said peas, I'm like, is this short? Like, should I know what you're talking about? The vegetable. Thank you. Right.
Peas obviously cover green peas, lentils. There's all
yes. Okay. Thank you.
Under the botanical name, lentils, everything. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so funny. Sorry.
So the ferritin iron is in them, all but in small amounts. So a clever person, it's based on a lady's PhD, and then her life's work was looking at the impact of ferritin iron from legumes, from peas, on humans' blood levels. With her, it began as a research project back in the very long time ago. This lady is now in her 80s. And I started diving into her work because I had never heard of ferritin iron. I wasn't taught that at university. To cut a very long story short, it's what I've put in Iconic Iron, my iron product, and it's extracted from organic peas. And its absorption mechanism is completely different from heme iron, non-heme iron, and also old school iron supplements. So it's very cool. So as I described earlier with non-heme iron, it's similar for old school iron supplements. So they're mostly iron salts, so what you buy at the chemist. And so when we swallow those old school iron supplements, the iron and whatever it's bound to gets pulled apart in the stomach, and then that iron, that free iron, is delivered to the gut cell, hops on the back of the truck, the DMT-1 truck, gets inside the cell. And because a lot of those pharmacy ones are really high dose, the gut cells can be flooded with a lot of free iron, which is highly inflammatory, which is what I think that's one reason I think a lot of people get gut-related symptoms like constipation when they use those supplements. And as I said earlier, your body's still got to get the iron out of the gut cell, which relies on copper, and copper isn't in those stock standard old school supplements. So that big problem, and one reason why I think a lot of people are put off taking those old school iron supplements, because I've had women say to me, the constipation is so bad, I'd rather be iron deficient. So, but with the peas, with the ferritin iron, it's completely different. So the majority of it survives degradation by stomach acid, and the ferritin iron cage with the iron inside of it is delivered whole to the gut cell wall, and it's absorbed via a process called receptor-mediated endocytosis. So it's grabbed and it's taken inside the gut cell, but it's taken in whole. So the iron is still inside the ferritin cage. So the gut cell is not exposed to free iron. And I think that's part of its magnificence, because that's part of why people aren't getting side effects from it. It also then isn't reliant on copper to get out of the gut cell, and it's delivered to the iron pool in that form, and that iron comes out there. And so then it can go off and do its work. So it sidesteps the usual iron absorption hurdles, and it's very, very gentle on the gut. And the trials we did before releasing Iconic Iron were sensational. They blew me away. But still today, Mikki, when people write in and say my ferritin was 17 and in 2 months it's now 43, or
that's amazing.
A lady, it moves the needle really quickly, and the difference in how people describe they feel is what drives me. I met a lady at the airport in Auckland, and she was wearing a delicious big fat healthy baby. She was wearing her baby on her front. She came up to me and she shared her story. She said she'd been iron deficient all of her adult life and really wanted to get on top of it for her pregnancy, used Iconic Iron, and she said her iron status actually improved in the third trimester of her pregnancy instead of falling apart, because we obviously double our blood volume when in that stage to create the new blood for a new baby. And she said the difference in her mothering for this baby, she said it's just a completely different experience of motherhood. And it was very moving to think about the ripple effect of just women having great iron status, as new mums, because it's, hard. And so, it's just, blows me away, Mikki.
That is amazing, Libby. Like, it is such a, like, I appreciate how you feel, but also like that, like to have your sort of not life's work. It's not like it's not over for you yet. I mean, you've got like 40 years or 50 years left, but to have people report that based on what you've done that's pretty amazing. What a joy and what a privilege, right? To be able to do that for people.
It is. I feel like everything else was just preparation for this, Mikki. If I'm honest, it's it's really what I feel like the rest of my life's work is going to be about. Is these conversations about iron, so we can reach as many people as possible. To help them. Yeah, focus on it. Just get the light shone back on it because of the difference it can make.
Yeah, that's amazing, Libby. And I don't want to move you on from iron, but because, and I'm serious, and but I know that you've got a magnesium supplement out, and there are other things that you've got sort of in the works. So what else? What's 2026 hold for you?
Well, iron. It's really all I want to talk about and focus on. So there'll be more iron related education. That's what I really love to do. And it's tricky with teenage girls because it's a real touch point for me that I'm not on TikTok, but maybe I'm going to have to go there. I don't really think they'll listen to me. So I feel like I need to find a
you need to recruit. Yeah.
I need a trendy, the word trendy is probably not even cool. I don't know. To find a teenage girl who kind of cares about it. Maybe she's been iron deficient and recovered and she can notice a real difference in herself. It's connecting with teenage girls. Sometimes when I'll do I'll do a talk, and the mothers in the audience will come and say, can you come and speak at my daughter's school? And I've done that many times, but you forget how uncomfortable they can be when you're talking about periods and even food, and they sit and twist their hair and turn around and talk to their friends. And what I realize when I'm in those situations, we so often don't care about something until we've suffered. The adult women care because they love their daughters, or it might be that they themselves have struggled with fertility, for example, and so they're very focused on health in an attempt to address that and help themselves more with that. So it's not until we've sort of had heartache, I think, sometimes that we do care about something. And what I find with teenage girls, they don't care. They literally will say to me, well, all my friends have anxiety, so why does that matter? Like, it's not a standout thing that they think would be good to address. It's when their hair starts falling out. That's when they don't like that.
Yeah.
You can get them into caring more about their food intake sometimes with the hair thing. But anyway, it's really tricky. But 2026, I would love to. It was a long-winded answer. I'm sorry, Mikki.
No, it's fine.
I'd love to try to reach teenage girls. We'll see.
Well, hopefully, anyone listening who has some like smart strategies can hit up your marketing team and just put them forward, because you're right. Like I totally right. Isn't that just so human nature? Like, until we care, we don't. Reason to care, we don't care really. Yeah.
Yep. And it's we don't know, talking to people about health, it doesn't, like young people especially, it doesn't land unless they've had an experience where they don't have it. We sort of don't appreciate it until there's a risk of it being taken away, or we have had it taken away and we've had to recover from something. And and that's sort of also what I mean about, I guess, resilience. We get this deep appreciation for life itself when there's a moment where we may no longer have it. And how wonderful that so many teenage girls have never been in that position. That's great. I don't wish them ill. So I'm trying to find ways to get them to care about addressing their iron deficiency without them having to suffer too much.
Yeah. Yeah, nice one, Libby. And I've got to say that, you've been remarkably resilient over the years and bringing your messages out where you might have got pushback from other traditional sort of circles because you just think differently and more holistically and really sort of get to the guts of what is actually important. Whereas I think a lot of the training that I did in my nutrition degree and that others, like, we miss a lot of the fundamentals that actually, I guess, do make people healthy. And even like, yes, iron is just one thing, but I'm just thinking back to when you first came onto the scene with rushing woman syndrome and all of that. Like, you really allowed us as women, but also us as practitioners, to think a bit differently about how to approach health, I suppose. So thank you for everything that you do. And it's amazing.
That's very generous. Thank you. Right back at you, Mikki. You change lives with what you share and how much you care. So
it's just what we do. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Libby, so much. I really appreciate it and enjoyed this conversation. And of course, I will put links to everything that you have in the show notes. But everyone knows who you are, but please, just for the one or two people listening who are like, who is this Dr. Libby? Where can people find out more from you? And of course, your information, supplements, etc.
Thanks, Mikki. Yeah, my website is just drlibby.com. So my books are there, and education, and thousands of free blog articles. And bioblends.com is the supplement company. So all made from food, and Iconic Iron is the really special iron supplement.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Libby.
Thank you, Mikki.
Alrighty, hopefully you really enjoyed that. I loved chatting to Libby. She is just such a thoughtful, considered and exceptionally smart woman, and I've been really blessed to have been influenced by the information that she's put out there over the years, and I'm sure that you have as well. So as I said, I've popped links as to where you can find Libby and her supplements in the show notes. All right, team, next week on the podcast, I have Professor Eric Revuson. Really looking forward to sharing that conversation on protein and metabolism with you. Until then, though, you can catch me over on Instagram, Threads and X at Mikki Williden, Facebook at Mikki Williden Nutrition, or head to my website, mikkiwilliden.com. All right, guys, you have the best week. See you later.